Okay, so welcome. I am Verlaine Quinniey, the founder and CEO of the Connect 757. And tonight we will be talking about the effects of entrepreneurship on the Black wealth gap. And this is in partnership with Antione Hines. And Antione, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Antione Hines. I'm the president, CEO of Black Systemic Equity Project. And so definitely it's going to be an awesome night. We have so much bright and awesome organizations and representatives so we can get this knowledge out there and we can go ahead and put it out there and change the legacy of many generations to come with information and guidance and pushing our families, like I just said earlier, to keep on going. So definitely me and Verlaine have to do this together with all our great guests.
All right, so we want to have our guests go ahead and introduce yourselves. Ms. Blair Durham.
Greetings. My name is Blair Durham. I am co-founder and president of Black Brand, Hampton Roads Regional Black Chamber of Commerce, and it's a pleasure to join you all this evening.
Mr. James Taylor.
Good evening, everyone. My name is James R. Taylor. I'm president of Virginia Housing and Community Development Corporation, and I am ecstatic to be here with you all this evening.
Ms. Cheree Warrick. Oh, there you go.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now, sorry. Hi, everybody, I'm Cheree Warrick. I'm from the 10K Project.
Thank you, Cheree. And Mr. Jermale Mathis.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Jermale D. Mathis Sr., and I am the Executive Director for the Hampton Roads Black Mastermind Affiliate Group.
Thank you, everyone. So we're going to hop in and we're going to get to our first question. But for our guests, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. If you have questions, feel free to pose them for the panel as well. If there's something that is dropped in the chat and you want to engage, feel free to talk to them as well. Okay, so the first question is for everyone. How does entrepreneurship affect the Black wealth gap? We're just going to jump right into it. This question is really going to open it up for us to have a deeper conversation for the rest of the night. And so whoever wants to take that one first, you're more than welcome to put your finger up and take it.
Well, I can say entrepreneurship is a driving force behind wealth. We have a history of that. Some examples would be the Black Wall Street. But we understand that economics is what drives the community. With that, you will be able to create sustainable wealth throughout generations because of the amount of money coming into the community and being utilized throughout the community because of entrepreneurship. If you look in some of our communities, we have areas that we live in but don't own any of the businesses in those areas. And that also contributes to the utilization of our dollar. For example, of it leaving, I think now it's what, 30 minutes, an hour that the Black dollar circulates in the community. And I think that's mainly due to the fact that we don't have any real economic entrepreneurship in the community itself to help drive the dollar and share it with the rest of the community.
I think the impact on the absence of Black entrepreneurship is not only that it creates or has created a situation where we're not able to catch up in terms of having parity with others in the United States, but it's also impacted us in a way that we don't have our own income. Looking around our communities nowadays, there are a large number of women, and I got to applaud you. I mean, women are outpacing men in the field of entrepreneurship, in the area of entrepreneurship like we wouldn't believe. I think the problem is that we have too few businesses, and for one reason or another, many don't seem to reach scale such that they can provide jobs and generate wealth among those folks that are working for the business. So we really need to address this issue of helping these businesses to access capital and credit and train them in the way that they can grow their businesses and scale them up.
Yep, and in harmony with the comments made by Mr. Mathis and Mr. Taylor, when you look at it from a national perspective, certainly you see the prevalence of Black business ownership, right? 2.6 million Black-owned businesses around the country, but only 4% of those businesses actually are employer firms. So we're not really creating wealth. I think that's why we're having the conversation. Entrepreneurship is not leading at this juncture to wealth creation. Even looking here locally, the average revenue of a Black-owned business is only $62,471, compared with our white counterparts coming in at just over $520,000 in revenue. And so when we think about, that kind of disparity, we recognize that there's a need for a mastermind, there's a need for a chamber, there's a need for a community development corporation, there's a need for a systemic equity project, right? We need all hands on deck to really address this issue.
So then I will come in and say that the 10K project has a plan for that, right? So let me introduce what the 10K project is. We are applying right now for something called an equity crowdfunding portal. We have to apply through the Securities and Exchange Commission and FINRA, which is the Financial Industry Regulatory Association, or agency, sorry. Equity crowdfunding, so what everyone said is correct with regards to, it's not just that we have so many businesses opening. It's the fact that we are opening what I'm going to say are like businesses that don't have employees, which, Blair mentioned that in her area, the average white-owned company, let's just say, is 500,000. National average is 750,000 for companies that have employees, versus the average for us is around 60,000, because a lot of us do not have employees. So we're not playing at a higher level. And then the second thing is we don't have the right types of businesses, which is what Jermale was talking about, meaning that we're working on an economic study right now, and the Black community has a 98% leakage with regards to businesses doing work with other businesses. What do I mean by that? I'll give you a great example. We got masks for the 10K project for our founding members. We went to a Black vendor in order to provide those masks for us. Who did he have to go to supply those masks to him? He had to go to Pakistan, because there were no Black vendors that could do that for him. That's what's called leakage. We do it every day. As consumers, we want to support the Black restaurant, but if they get all of their product from non-Black people, that's leakage. So we have to focus on having not only employer-based businesses, but the right businesses across multiple industries. And that's what the 10K project is working on with what we call equity crowdfunding. And the final thing is, James mentioned access to capital. Equity crowdfunding is a way for the community to fund its own businesses. And we as the community can get partial ownership in those businesses. And, I can talk more about that as we go, but that is what we're doing.
Yes, awesome. It's funny because you mentioned that, and in my collage behind me, it's from your page.
I love it. Yes, I see it.
So definitely, is numerous things out here inside the U.S. when we're talking about this the Black wealth gap and shrinking it and closing it, and numerous ideas and strategies. And one of the main things that we have across the U.S., we have Blair Durham right here as the regional Black Chamber of Commerce right here in inside Virginia. One of the main things that we have, me personally, I've gotten much more access to capital, resources, connections, and networking just through my local Black Chamber of Commerce, and we have them throughout the U.S. And I think it's a utilized thing of that part. And that goes to the second question. Goes to Blair Durham, and then definitely anyone else can add in your background. How are the Black chambers across the country creating opportunities to build Black wealth? And the second part of that, what are some short-term resources businesses can take advantage of now that would provide access to capital and make them scalable? Keyword.
Great question. And kind of being connected with other Black chambers, watching a shift taking place. So Black chambers were primarily focused on networking and creating media platforms. The shift now is about capital, and ensuring that members and the general Black business community can access the needed resources. I know one of the things that we've been working on since our inception is the creation of a community development financial institution. There's been a lot of talk about CDFI here in recent weeks, with some federal legislation looking at ways in which minority depository institutions can actually be supported in that way. And so building out a program that provides not only capital, but also those technical assistance resources, those mentorship resources, kind of provides a wraparound solution in a market where, quite frankly, to Cheree's point, we're not certain as to what kinds of businesses we should really be starting, right? So looking at how we expand across industry, how we infuse innovation into our businesses, ends up being something that chambers are looking at doing, I think, to a greater extent. I know I've been getting tons of outreach from the national Black chambers to say, hey, these are the ways in which we're trying to provide capital. How can we link up with what you're doing? Here are the corporate partners that are wanting to come on board. And so very grateful in these times to have been able to, through both short-term and some sort of longer-term strategies, infuse our region with capital. So those are my thoughts. Oh, second question, you ask about scalability. Yeah, this is key. And I think it's really the same question, right? It's about, because there are different funding needs that you have as a startup versus, someone that's established 3 to 5 years, 5 years plus, right? When you're looking at how can I franchise my model? How can I duplicate? How can I really expand? And so again, opening up the capacity for banking relationships is also something that's critical. When the pandemic first started, I polled our members and those in our group to say, hey, who is it that you do your business banking with, and why did you cultivate that relationship? Okay, as a follow-up question, do you know your banker? Because what we found out was, those that had a relationship with their banker, what did they get immediately? Well, they got PPP and they got EIDL, right? So helping to cultivate those relationships so that kind of throughout the life cycle of a business, we're supported. Yeah.
And Blair, can you hit on, actually today was the due date for funding that you had available from you all?
Yes, I screamed just prior to the call because I got word that ADP has made a significant contribution to that grant fund. So the We Care 757 program that was kind of spearheaded by Dominion Energy, and then later Centera, and then Atlantic Union, and then Thrivent, and now ADP, is all about really our community. We kind of, alongside Urban League, said, you know what, let's promote this, let's market it to the 25,000 Black-owned businesses in Hampton Roads, because we realized, again, we didn't get access to a lot of these other programs. And so, yeah, just very pleased to say that if you are a business owner, you can still submit an application through midnight, and those funds are going to be dispersed on November 13th. So again, $2,500, $5,000, and $10,000 grants. It's a short-term piece, but I think every little bit helps, particularly in these times.
So they can go to Black Brands page and see the application, or even the Urban League's page of Southampton Roads page. So definitely that's funding available. And that's that access to capital, because that funding got directed to the local Black Chamber of Commerce to come through them. So you becoming a member and becoming connected to them gets you connected to more funding and more opportunities. I can talk more about the chamber, but it definitely is a great resource.
Okay, I just wanted to chime in just to ask a question. I'm new, so I guess I'm trying to learn. And what caught my eye was because I am a nurse and I want to start a business at Hampton Roads. But the obstacles that I'm starting to find is that every city is something different and specific. And I don't want to just gear towards, let's say, Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Chesapeake. Why can't it be just one? Like one connected city. That way we don't have to worry about where I live. Oh my God, I could only go to Virginia Beach, or I could only go to this. And that's the kind of what I'm going through, because what I want to open up is I'm a nurse, but I want to open up a non-medical emergency like transport for seniors, which is very needed, because a lot of seniors, they skip going to their appointments because they can't drive anymore. They have a lot of comorbidities, and they miss a lot of appointments, which means their health is really declining. So with that being said, how can I turn around and get funding for that without having to jump through so many hoops and have to worry about what, so cities, because I've been to the Chamber of Commerce, and they just looked at me like I got a third head. I'm like, okay, aren't you here to help? What are you here for? And all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to know, what are my resources and how could I do something where I don't have to just be city specific and also help my community?
Miss Yvonne, may I ask you, how are you organized? What is your business structure?
Okay, first I'm doing this. This is my own thing that I'm doing. I'm just an LLC. Well,
Okay,
I got my LLC and I'm doing myself. Well, actually a sole proprietor, because it is
okay.
a home-based business. But I mean, I could do from anywhere as long as I have a computer and a phone,
That's
stuff
understood.
like that.
I'm going
So,
to try to, in the limited time we have, I'm going to try to answer your question. First of all, the reason why you're getting those stares when you go to different cities, and the reason why each city has a different program, is because each city has its own Department of Economic Development, and their task is to bring business to those cities. And so if you have a viable business that they can help you to set up, then they'll direct all the resources that they can towards you. But if you're not yet organized and you haven't demonstrated that you actually have a viable business that you're operating, then they're probably not going to be as much interested in you, and they're going to direct you to other resources. That's number one. Number two, you have to understand that, if you're operating as a sole proprietor, then raising capital is on you. That's going to come out of your own pocket. But if you're a limited liability, then you should be selling interest in your limited liability and trying to get other folks to come on as members of your limited liability company. As well as if you were a corporation, you'd be selling stock. If you're a partnership, you're selling interest in the partnership. So the question is, how are you organized? And the way that you're organized is going to determine how you're going to raise capital for your business. So keep in mind that, unless you're putting in a good chunk of your own money, it's going to be very, very difficult for other people to come in or want to come in and take most of the risk. So, we can address a lot more of that offline, but that basically, I think, is the crux of your question.
well, does it really have to do actually with a business plan, or it's more in depth than that? Because a business plan is really not a problem. I mean, that hasn't been a problem.
Well,
It's just trying to see where to go.
the business plan is an internal document. It's not an external document. It's not something you share with a whole lot of people. What you're talking about basically is, well, if you're not a sole proprietor, if you're a limited liability company, corporation, et cetera, then what you really ought to be preparing is what's called a prospectus to help you to raise money. So if you're looking at, again, I think this is a very in-depth question that we really ought to take offline, because this can really get into the nitty-gritty of actually working through your business plan. But you really need to start with how you're organized. Are you a limited liability company? Are you a sole proprietor, a corporation? And based upon how you're organizing your company, that will tell you what type of capital you need to be pursuing. So if I were you, I would stick with the limited liability company and forget the sole proprietorship, because as a sole proprietor, you are going to be the one that's going to have to go out and get the money, and it's going to be your money that you're going to be putting into the business, and then credit that you're going to be relying upon to actually get the things that you need for the business and to operate it. So it's all on you. But as a limited liability company, you should be looking for people to come in as a co-owner of the business to help you to raise it, so that you can raise the capital you need to get the business off the ground and running. Then you can start looking at outside resources to help you to finance your business.
For time purposes, we're going to go ahead and move forward, but it does sound like James would be able to talk to you a little bit more in depth. So James, if you could share your information with Yvonne, that would be great in the chat, or you can send her a direct message as well. Thank you. That was a great question, Yvonne. Next question is going to be for Jermale. This is talking a little bit more about the business structures. So which business structure would have the best results as a new business owner? What things should we potentially stay away from if we're interested in long-term wealth? And then the last part of that question is, can multi-level marketing or pyramid scheme business structures actually close the wealth gap?
Thank you for those questions. Starting with the first question, which is just me pretty much continuing what Mr. Taylor was talking about in regards to the business structure. As she mentioned before, she said she was a sole proprietor and she had an LLC. Funding institutions do not like sole proprietorships because they look at you as COO or the chief only operator, which means you're the one that's handling all the services, which also means you're the single point of failure if something happens, and they don't like that type of risk. So they would prefer you to be structured correctly like an LLC, C Corp, S Corp, because then that means you have some type of staffing and some management involved. If you are a sole proprietor, I recommend those who are, they have to come up with a relaunch of their organization and restructure themselves because institutions are not going to fund them. The majority of Black businesses that are out here now are mostly sole proprietorships. And because they're not able to access capital, that leads to their businesses failing. Even though we start the most businesses in the US, we also have the most failing. And that's mainly due to how we structure our businesses when we start them. And that is key in regards to how Black Mastermind wants to impact the community by providing that type of education, training, coaching, and mentoring so that we can create a formula that will help entrepreneurs who are already in business and want to get into business so that they can have access to funding initiatives. Your second question, which was, what should be the potential way to what should you stay away from?
Yeah.
Sole proprietorships. Try to find ways to restructure your organization. And you have to have other people involved. You did mention you had a business plan. That's an internal documentation, as Mr. Taylor said. But in that business plan, do you have employees? Are you structured to have some type of staffing in place? What are your price points? What do you know what your industry is? Like, how much money is your industry itself making? Is it scaling up? Is it scaling down? Now that we're in COVID, a lot of industries have been hit hard and not being able to adapt as well. Those are things that you also take into consideration when structuring your organization for pandemics and other entities like natural disasters and stuff like that. Your third question, which talked about MLMs and pyramid schemes. There is no generational wealth created in an MLM. Generational wealth is based on ownership. You own nothing in an MLM unless you created the MLM. You are 1099, you're a glorified salesperson for that entity to sell whatever products or services that they created for you to give out to other people. I'm not saying that they're bad, I'm just saying they're not wealth creating. So in regards to pyramid schemes, I mean, the name in itself lets you know that that is illegal. But crowdfunding and collaborative economics would be a great asset for that. And it's not set up like a pyramid scheme, but it's a great way to get a number of people together who may not have a lot of funding to create a larger pool to gain access to capital, to create capital to gain access to assets, i.e. land, stock, you got blockchain, you got Forex. There's a variety of crowdfunding opportunities out there that people can use to collaborate, to come together to create wealth. You can come together to buy an apartment complex, and then you can, there's a variety of ways you can do this to create it. But the key here, to close the wealth gap, ownership. And I'm gonna leave off that one. You have to have ownership.
Yeah. And one of the things we was talking about pyramid schemes. One of the things Blair, I know it was a couple of weeks ago or last month, you had a guest on Facebook talking about the loom. One of the things that with African Americans nowadays is coming around every single year, is the looms, the flowers, and different things. I mean, I was in it once, lost a lot of money and everything like that. And Blair, you want to hit on that? Is that wealth building?
So two things that I've learned. Number one, the money has to come from somewhere. That just is what it is, right? The money has to come from somewhere. And the second is there is a legitimate way of doing it. What's the name for it? Someone remind me. What is it called? What is it called?
Bank.
It's essentially a short-term, it's a savings club.
Oh, like a
Right?
susu,
So
personal susu.
say 5 of us come together, one of us needs $10,000
So.
immediately.
Yeah.
Everybody, right? And that's completely legal.
Mhm.
But essentially, everyone has to put that $2,000 in for that period of time until everyone gets paid out.
Yeah,
So
peer-to-peer lending is what you're referring to.
peer-to-peer lending,
Yeah.
susu, and these things, they work. I mean, my understanding is you can go to certain countries where this is being practiced, and if folks don't put that money up, you know, all bets are off, right?
Yeah.
But that's savings, that's peer-to-peer
Savings.
lending. These things that we're being invited to, I know someone that has been incarcerated for 10 years behind a very sophisticated Ponzi scheme that was connected to real estate. Because the money has to come from somewhere. If I've got to bring 2 people in and you got to bring 2 people in, at some point, at some point, that's not to say some people aren't going to make some money, but at some point it's done. So, and
Thank
like
you.
you, Antoine, like I thought, okay, but you think it through long enough and you realize this is not the real deal. So
Exactly. Thank you. The next question goes to James. What are micro businesses and how has micro equity and investment partnerships helped Black communities across the country?
First thing is, a micro business is a business where there are 1 to 5 individuals as the principals of the business. And if you're a fan of Shark Tank or any of these other pitch competitions and things like that, you'll notice that there's usually 1 or 2 individuals who come and they have an idea and they want to launch a business, or they're trying to expand their business, or they're looking for investors. So that is a micro business. And typically a micro business is one that's earning less than $100,000 a year. But the impact of investments, investment partnerships, across the United States, a number of investment clubs have formed over the years. They have been organized primarily as general partnerships. They were started out as a club, and then they formalized themselves into a general partnership. Well, all of the partners, all of the individuals who are involved in that group are active, and they are all working together. The idea of an investment club is that you have a group of individuals who pool their money on a monthly basis, and they decide what to do, where to invest those funds. And so as many of these clubs are growing and establishing their portfolios, they're investing in publicly traded stocks, they're investing in real estates, they're investing in bonds. The idea is that over a medium point of time, usually 5 years, or 5 to 7 years, perhaps 10 years, they will have grown their portfolios such that they can take those dollars and then go back and invest them into small micro businesses. And so you see this occurring across the country, mainly in the area of real estate, because that's where people are getting the biggest bang for their buck. But the idea is that if we all work together, we form a partnership, we each put $100 a month or $500 a month or whatever the number is into a pool, we can then take those dollars and invest them into our community. We can invest them in businesses that are in our community. So we establish what would be kind of like a Shark Tank. VHCDC back in 2013, we started the first investment clubs in the Hampton Roads region. We still have about 3 in this area operating. We actually went across the Commonwealth of Virginia and started launching clubs, and unfortunately some of them folded, but there's still a number of them that are around. We started out with basically some investing $25 a month, some putting in $100 a month. Right now, they have probably a combined asset total of about $75,000, $80,000 in their treasury. But again, the idea is we started those investment clubs with the thinking, with the vision that one day they would be able to turn around and invest $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 into a local minority-owned business. And so that was our focus, that was our drive. This all really came about as a result of the Jobs Act. If you remember back in April of 2012, President Obama signed a legislation called the Jobs Act, which was Jumpstart Our Business Act. And this spurred the creation of, once the final regulations were in place, this spurred the regulation of the creation of a number of crowdfunding platforms that people can pool their funds, and those platforms will basically make those funds available to local businesses. And so we're seeing a strong growth in those. And I'm glad to hear that Cheree is actually working on developing one here in the local area. But basically, investment clubs is a very, very good tool that we can use to build wealth in the Black community. It's a way for folks who are not accredited investors. I'm an accredited investor. I'm a very active investor. I have investments in a number of projects, a number of local businesses, and some in other states. But there are not a lot of people like me who have the ability to invest in other businesses. So we can use an investment club or a general partnership to pool dollars and make those funds available locally to help other businesses to stand up. And then those individuals can then turn around, those businesses join or create an investment club or join an existing general partnership investment club and invest in other businesses to keep the money going. So that's one way we can help ourselves. This is what's been done in the Asian community. This is what's done in the Italian community. This is what's done in the Jewish community. We need to learn the same tools and tricks of the trade. Warren Buffett is a billionaire today because he got started with an investment club. Okay, Berkshire Hathaway started as an investment club. Take that and marinate on it for a little bit, and you'll see the idea, and hopefully it'll grow, and we can do that here in Hampton Roads and abroad.
Awesome, amen. Yeah, I'm sorry. Really?
The next question we have is for Cheree, kind of transitioning into that and the importance of banking Black. We hear a lot of that, and how do we support each other? But what is the importance of banking Black and creating a family bank? And how do these actually affect the Black dollar?
So I was just showing y'all my card, my Black bank card.
Oh, you may want to hide the numbers though.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. Oh my goodness. It is being recorded too, so block that out before you post it.
We'll do that.
Edit.
I just want to let James know and everyone know that our organization is national, not just for the Hampton Roads area. So I want to let you know we're building we're building what I'm calling the nation's largest community of small dollar Black investors who want to invest Black and invest in Black businesses specifically. So with that, the importance of banking Black. So when we think about banks and what their importance is just in general society, number one, they do in a way safeguard our money, right? At least they're supposed to through the FDIC, up to $250,000 you can have in any individual bank. The majority of us should be able to go into any bank in the United States and open up an account, right? You know, things like that. So when you go outside of the United States, you sometimes take these things for granted. The way that banks operate is they accept our money as depositors, and then they loan the money out. How do they loan the money out? Sometimes it's through credit cards, which is access to capital for a lot of the micro businesses that James just talked about. Sometimes it is home loans, which is one of the greatest paths to wealth for Black people. Sometimes it's business loans, which a lot of us do not unfortunately get for various reasons. But that is one of the paths to companies growing faster and being able to become what they call employer firms, which we talked about before. So the importance of banking Black is so that the Black banks that we have enough deposits so that they can loan money to businesses, to potential homeowners, and to consumers out there for consumer purchases, so the economy can move and keep moving. One of the issues that we have with Black banks is, number one, a lot of them are closing. When I did my research about Black banks and just trying to figure out why Black businesses have such a hard time with scaling and growing, et cetera. I think it was 10 years ago, there were 40 something Black banks and now there are 21. You know, shout out to Killer Mike and Andrew Young, who just started the Greenwood Bank. They're doing a digital bank now. But it's important for them to not only, somebody had mentioned in the chat, what can we do to, you know, start a bank and start a credit union? It's not enough for us to have the number of banks, but we also have to have the deposits within the banks as well. Otherwise, it's no good. We could have 50 million banks that have, you know, 50 cents each, does no good. So I personally believe that we need to focus maybe on the banks that we have now, increasing the amount of deposits that we have, so that we are able to then, you know, get more loans into the hands of business owners and homeowners. Number two is there was a very good book that was written. It was written by an Indian woman, Mirza Baradaran. I'm looking over here because it's on my bookshelf, called The Color of Money. And she goes deep into talking about Black banks. There's a lot of systemic issues that Bank of America, Wells Fargo, et cetera, don't have that our banks have. So all I'm going to say is you need to go and read that book to understand some of the additional issues that Black banks have that the greater society of banks don't have. But that's the importance of banking Black, is it does enable us to receive loans as either businesses or as homeowners, which then helps us to create more wealth, have leverage for more and more wealth. The second question was about starting a family bank, which is what we are doing as a challenge starting on November 16th. Actually, open enrollment is November 2nd to November 16th. And there have been a lot of family investment clubs that have started. And James had talked a little bit about, you know, family and friends getting together and doing these investment clubs. A family bank takes that to the next level. So it's all about generational wealth. And what happens is, you know, it could be your blood relatives, it could be family friends that get together, frat brothers, et cetera. We interviewed a Black family that started off with $25 per month per family member and now has seven figures in cash and assets because they started their family bank. The family bank is able to do a couple of things. Number one is a portion of the money is on reserve for family members that have emergencies or need, you know, deposit for a home or something like that. Then the portion of the money goes into investments, and there, you know, there can be all sorts of investments. I think a lot of us just don't know what a family bank is. It is something that, this is a book that I would suggest as well, Family Wealth by James Hughes. This talks about how the rich get richer and how families have 100+ year plans, like wealthy families have 100-year plus plans. The big thing that's in this book is not only how to create a family bank for now while you're alive, but how to make sure that your kids don't screw it up and your grandkids and your great grandkids don't screw it up, because you don't want to work your whole life and leave money to a financially illiterate heir who then squanders it. So we're getting together and we are doing a family bank challenge where we're going to educate people and get family banks started. And again, November 2nd through the 16th is open enrollment. You can find us at the10kproject.com. And we have an intro session that's on November 2nd. Just come, you know, it's free to attend. Come hear what we're doing and you'll be able to decide if you want to participate in the challenge. So
awesome. So Cheree, is there anything y'all do on Mondays or in the afternoons?
Yes, so we have every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern time, we have what we call a fireside chat. Sometimes we have guests come in, sometimes we talk about, you know, different things happening in Black economics. So we talk about the Black economy. And the November 2nd session at 6 p.m. is going to be about our Family Bank Challenge. And we're going to introduce it. We've got an amazing, amazing challenge for individuals. Even if you're just curious about what it is and how it could benefit your family, definitely come to that and hear what we're doing. You can decide at that time if you want to come.
I will be there because I'm a member of the 10K project already.
Yeah, so if you're a member of the 10K project, you're grandfathered in.
So definitely that's awesome because my family has had 2 or 3 meetings now. We've already been talking about stocks and bonds and what other businesses and real estate already. So definitely, and I know Verlaine has done the same thing with her family. So that's something that we can actually create trust, create our own private foundations, with us having college and everything like that. I want to have my daughter to have no loans and everything. So what if the whole family bank could be giving them some certain funding to go to college, certain scholarships? We can be working with other communities, or just like James said earlier, we can be investing in our local micro businesses out here to help them to get employees to be scalable, like Blair said. So definitely.
Right. And wealth building is a team sport. Like a lot of people, especially a lot of us, we want to do everything by ourselves, right? But that is the wrong way to do it. Now, I'm not telling you to open up your wallet and give your family member your credit card. I'm not saying that, but we do have to look at it. The other ethnicities participate in wealth building as a team sport. And I do think that is a flaw in our community that we need to really work on.
Thank you. All right, one of the last questions that we have, and this is going to be open to everyone, and this is actually connects with some other events coming up next week. We're going to be talking about the Black church, which is the existence of unused, untapped funding and economics throughout the U.S. That is a system in place throughout the U.S. already. So, question is, the Black church is one entity that has a Black community system in place with several Black businesses, Black nonprofits as members for a sustainable amount of time. How can we utilize it to circulate the Black dollar longer? Right now, we know the Black dollar circulates like 6 hours in our Black community. Other nationalities is longer. So how can we circulate that longer, utilizing the Black church with the businesses and nonprofits that we have in our communities? Anyone can answer that.
I'm going to start off then, since no one else has jumped in. Blair, did you want to say something? Because I have a definite opinion about this.
So I'm not going to say anything.
Okay, I have a definite opinion about this, and it's a little bit of a different opinion than most. I'm going to refer back to the Chinese and the Chinese government. And one of the things that they did about 30, 40 years ago, there was a time when anything that came out of China was junk. Some of us may remember that. But one of the things that they did was they started coordinating their young people with regards to who's going to be doing what. Now, they had more of an authoritarian status with it, but they took the smart kids that could learn English really well and said, you're going to be doing business. They took the kids that were coders and said, you're going to be, going into science and technology. They took the other kids and said, you're going to, do ballet or whatever. I think within the Black church, we need the same type of thing. The Black church is the only national structure that has really stood the test of time. But I do think that when we talk about our businesses need to be more coordinated with, who's doing what, who's making the ketchup that goes on the fries, right? Who's making who's growing the potatoes themselves, all of those things. And I think that it's not just enough for us to say, hey, can we get 16 businesses in a Black church to work together? It's what types of businesses are they, and can we coordinate through the National Baptist Convention or the African Methodist Association or whatever, in order to really coordinate our businesses. So that's I could go on for an hour about
Yeah,
this,
definitely.
and I probably will on a live one day. But
Okay.
I think when we have these conversations, they're missing a couple of levels deeper in terms of what the real solutions are. Because I don't think the solution is just say, let's have more businesses. I think that we've tried that and it's not working.
Because we have in every city, I used to be a liaison for almost 400 churches here inside the city of Chesapeake. And when I worked with many churches, and just thinking about one real estate agent and that one house, they had a gardener inside the church, they had a plumber inside the church, they had a painter inside the church, they had all types of businesses that was all for that house, which they didn't realize until they actually started talking about all the businesses. So like you just said, everything would be already inside that church. And like I think you had said earlier, if we were able to circulate those dollars within, now we can actually have that circulation funding. I think Blair, you want? Oh, you didn't want on it?
I was going to say, to piggyback on top of that, well, in regards to the churches in themselves, everything is built on a system, and nothing can survive without a system being in place. So what I would recommend with the Black Bank, not the Black Bank, but the Black churches, if this is a viable option for circulation of our money, then we need to create a system or configure the churches to where they are able to do that. A lot of churches are, they are churched. I don't see too many collaborations with churches coming together for too many things. And then like you just mentioned, Antoine, about them not knowing that it has so many businesses under one roof. Maybe we can sit down with the churches and figure out a system to where they're actually providing, we'll be able to provide more services to the Black community in regards to financing and other means. I don't know what that system is yet, but because I don't know how the churches are really set up. But once we figure that out, we can easily create a system, since it's the longest standing structure that we have that's in every Black community, to where we can funnel money through those entities. Just an option.
I think James, did you have?
I'm trying to taper my comments on this subject. So let me try to navigate, because I told you when you first came up with this question, you're stepping on a lot of toes. And but I will say this: one of the things that has always concerned me about our religious institutions is the propensity to focus on death rather than life, and encouraging, instructing, and helping its members to understand finances and to build wealth. I know we came through some challenging times, and the church was the lead and helped us through, slavery, and helped us through the civil rights era, helped us through the last, 20 years in terms of advancements, in education, et cetera. But we still have an overarching theme about death. And so I would really like to see our churches begin to focus more on wealth building, more on life building, more on helping people to overcome the slave mentality that a number of us still walk around with every day. This tendency we have to quit a church and go start another one is, we got to learn to work together. We got too many of them out here that are not doing enough. And I would like to see more of them banding together. Like, for example, where I live in Suffolk, I know that there's a group that they formed a liaison, not a liaison, what do you call it? They formed a group where they banded together to help individuals who needed rental assistance. And I can remember, back in the day when I would contact a church, and I'm saying back in the day, back in the early 2000s, when I would contact a church and say, I have somebody who needs some help, the first question I would get is, well, are they a member of our church? I have no idea, and I don't care. I don't think that's the issue. I think that when you have resources to help people, you don't have to be the only church doing that. We need to figure out a way for these churches to band together and use their limited resources to create a much larger resource. And let's face it, they are the wealthiest entity in our community. They are the wealthiest entity in our community. Where are their investments? Where are their investments in minority businesses? Where are their investments in micro business enterprise? Where are their investments in what money are they holding in Black-owned institutions? That is, as I said, this is a touchy subject for me, but I'm saying that, hey, this is something that we need to talk about. We need to address it. And we don't have to be a member of a church to have that conversation. We need to stop this mess about, well, I'm only doing this for my members. Because if your members become wealthy, then they have more money to put into the till. But as long as they stay enslaved to poverty, they will forever be of the poverty mindset. So we've got to focus on that. And that's my 2 cents.
That's 2 cents. Cheree.
Thank you for letting me unmute myself. So I wanted to, okay, I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to throw my atom bomb in here, and, we'll see where the pieces end up. The Black church does have a problem with youth, people under 40 coming in, right, or staying. Also, I'm asking this as people who are naturally self-starters, if you're on this call. I personally get very frustrated with us always having to go to other people and convince them to help us. We got to go to the Democrats. I'm sorry if you're a Democrat. We got to go to the Republicans. I'm sorry if you're for them. We got to go to the Black church. We got to go to the HBCUs. I personally am just like, you know what? I'm gonna create my own, right? And I'm put together a group of people on my own who are like, look, we're going to figure this out. We're like, this is our vision. This is what we're doing. We're not begging the Black church. We're not begging the Republican. I'm a descendant of slaves on both sides. If reparations comes, believe me, I have my paperwork, but I'm not waiting on that. And a part of these conversations, and I'll just blurt it out here, I get very frustrated because I'm like, would somebody just say, let's just do something ourselves and not worry about these institutions? And yeah, I know, the Black church brings in $14 billion a year, but I believe there's a group of us that could bring in just as much money for our own economic development if we had, the right people kind of saying, here's what we're doing. So I'm just throwing it out there, like I said, let the pieces fall where they may,
Multiple
I appreciate that. But that $16 billion is not something I can ignore. And especially when I see people who are very low income, whom, we have a first-time home buyers program. We counsel people, we teach, how to purchase a home. We help people get a home. And when we're counseling and we're looking at financial statements and we're looking at credit card debt and all of this, okay, but yet, here's a person who goes to church and tithes religiously.
Yeah.
What am I missing here? Okay, they're not getting this education in church. They're certainly not getting it in the public schools for some reason. And for some reason, we've allowed this fiasco to continue decade after decade, where we're not demanding that churches teach our kids economics. The church is supposed to be the last bastion of our community. So why aren't they doing more in that regard? And so I'm not asking them to save us. Believe me, when I tell you I'm not asking for them to save anyone. I'm just saying that if you're going to be a member of a church, then the church should be a member of you.
Yeah. Well, and we have, now when I say no churches out there do that, I know Blair had a comment.
I need to steer clear, but I will just say one quick thing. Yeah, churches practice group economics. And for anyone watching, they're teaching group economics. They know exactly how to circulate the Black dollar to benefit the church. And that's really it.
It's the ultimate investment club.
$16 billion. That's
yeah.
So, and that's
hey,
something that we can get.
One other thing, if I could, Antoine.
Okay.
There is a movement in Hampton Roads that is brewing It is a collaborative of a collective of white billionaires who have figured out that if the focus needs to be on Black-owned businesses, that they should leverage pastors. And they are preparing to launch something huge in our region. And it involves them having ownership of our businesses, having, ownership. And so, yeah.
So as we wrap this up, and I want to make sure too, some of the people who watch this and we're local, we do have the Mount Bishop Kim Brown. They actually, I was in a training with him before COVID, and he said he takes the model of Chick-fil-A. He actually teaches that inside of his church, and they're going on 7 different churches here inside Hampton Roads. He also has what did he call the business huddle, in which he has almost 70, 80 different businesses in the church come together. And I've been there. So he opens up to the public. I went there for SWAM training. I went there for to learn about the SBA, and they had numerous businesses in the community come there. I have another bank, I can't remember the name right now, but it's in the Maryland, DC area, and they actually have bought different land and were doing community development so they can actually work in the community. They open up a shelter, they open up apartments, and that was from the church itself. So the church can do many things. And I want to say next week, like I said, next week we will have Connecting Black Systemic Equity Project. On Tuesday, we have Zoom at 6 o'clock will be for pastors and church leaders. And we have Dr. Lance McCarthy going to be speaking. He's worldwide speaker on equity, as he's an economist and everything. So that's on Tuesday night. On Thursday night, we'll have any Christians, any entrepreneurs from churches that want to talk about creating a ministry. So I already have several pastors that want to create economic ministries within the church to bring the Black businesses together and bring the Black nonprofits. Because when you think about the nonprofits in our community, I run a nonprofit right now. I'm helping my community, but I'm struggling on access to capital and funding and volunteers and different things. But what if the businesses, accountants that are professionals in every sort, came and worked with me with the nonprofit? And what if we did that all inside the church itself? And now we all could build together. So we're going to be talking about that next week on Tuesday and on Thursday too. So we're going to wrap this up, Verlaine. This has been an awesome night.
Yes, we went through a lot of things. I know some of the main takeaways I know that were kind of reiterated throughout the night is you have to have ownership, creating the right type of business. We need to transition to that. It should be employer-based. And wealth building is a team sport. So thinking of some of those main things, we recorded this, so we will be sharing this as well. As we close out, can our panelists just go ahead really quickly and say how people can get in contact with you? Cheree, I'll start off with you first.
Okay, everybody, we are at the10kproject.com. That's THE10kproject.com.
Thank you, Cheree. James?
Virginia Housing and Community Development Corporation, vhcdc.org or vhcdc.net.
Thank you, James. Jermale?
My name is Jermale Mathis. You can get a hold of our organization at our website, theblackmastermindgroup.com. Or you can reach out to us on Facebook, either the Hampton Roads Black Mastermind Affiliate Group, or you can email me directly at jermale.mathis@gmail.com. That's JERMALE.MATHIS@gmail.com.
Thank you, Jermale. And Blair?
Hi, thank you again. This has been great. Blair Durham, blackbrand.biz, BLACKBRAND.biz. My email address is blair@blackbrand.biz.
All right. And I'm Antoine from the Black Systemic Equity Project Incorporated on Facebook. I want to tell y'all one of the main things, all 4 of these guest speakers, I've invested my time and my money to become a part. James, I'm actually an advisor on the board for I'm VHCDC. I'm a member of the 10K Project. I'm a member of the Black Chamber of Commerce. I'm a member of the Hampton Roads Black Mastermind Group. So I've invested my time and money inside these organizations so I can get more education. And I started a business to make sure that information gets out to many more people. So definitely we can do this together.
Awesome. Thank you,
What's your company, Verlaine?
The Connect
What y'all
757.
do?
We are the premier social networking organization for Hampton Roads Black Young Professionals. So we do have several events coming up. Black brand Blair and I will actually be doing a Black business showcase on Saturday. So there's still time to register to attend that. And that will be streaming live on Facebook as well. And we have several events next week leading up to Halloween. Mainly social networking events because that is our focus. So that's what we're going to transition to. A couple fun events next week. So thank you all for joining in, taking this time tonight to have this very important and needed conversation. And I will be sending out the information from today to everyone that signed up. So have a great night and thank you guys.
Thank you.
So good seeing you all. Thanks, Cheree. Bye.
Have a good night.